Hey everybody, it's Keith and welcome back to the channel. Before I get into today's video, I certainly want to give credit where credit is due. I am not a car guy. I know a little bit about certain vehicles, but not a lot about a lot of vehicles. So this is my first K-truck, K-van, Japanese import, and I certainly want to give credit where credit is due. So far, I've watched several people on YouTube talking about the Subaru Sambars, the Sambar vans, the DS, DS1, DS2, and the person that I find the most informative and the most entertaining is the YouTube channel called OK Garage. So OH space KEI for kind of a play on words. OK Garage, a gentleman out in the state of Washington, I believe, and this guy is a trip. He kind of reminds me, if you think of the movie Point Break with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves, he seems to me like one of the surfer guys that would be with Patrick Swayze, one of his bank robbers. Super chill guy, super funny, very laid back. So if you get a chance, you have any interest on K trucks and other vehicles as well, he does some other, mostly K trucks and vans. Give him a like and a follow over at OKOH space KEI Garage. He has a lot of great videos and also sells parts. So speaking of parts, this vehicle's 28 years old. You wouldn't be able to tell by looking at 90% of it cosmetically and engine wise and everything. So 28 years old. So with anything that's 28 years old, you're going to have a difficult time finding parts. You have a vehicle that's 28 years old. Behind me, my Buick LeSabre, got a 99 Buick LeSabre, so that makes it 25 years old with 80,000 miles on it. Still able to find parts for that. Not a huge issue with that. But you take a vehicle that is certainly not built and certainly not imported a lot here in the United States, and you're going to have a very difficult time getting parts. So the gentleman on OK Garage, he has a lot of the parts, and he also provides links and information on other places that could provide parts as well. So give him a like, give him a follow. So anything that I'm going over today, for the most part, I learned from him. So certainly kudos to Mr. Man over at OK Garage. So anyway, another thing about parts, they're either no longer being made, or if they are, they're a bit pricey. And if you're buying them directly from Japan, just know, depending on what website you go to, the shipping can be awfully expensive. I can't remember the name of the one website, but if you buy a part that's $10 or $15 US dollars, potentially you're going to pay over $100 in shipping, and you just got to get it across half the world. Now, like the gentleman at OK Garage, and there's a lot of other folks here in the United States that sell these parts, I assume they have either sourced them directly, they've made bulk purchases. I have no idea. But a lot of things, a lot of parts they will have. Certainly, you're not going to pay the shipping. But I think it's easy to say and rightful to say that they have to make their money back somehow. So they're going to add a few dollars to the price of whatever, because they have to obviously, one, make a profit, and two, they have to recoup the enormous cost it takes to get these items shipped over to them. So I want to talk briefly about the heat shield that goes over the manifold. Now, this one's a little more beat up because I had to really get into it. So in the last video, I was in the process of going through and taking some of these bolts off. Now, 28 years old, only 25,000 miles, but I tell you what, these engines run hot. Warmed this baby up the other day, and man, you couldn't even get anywhere near the manifold and this heat shield. These little 4 cylinders, they'll get you down the road, but high RPMs going to generate a lot of heat. Hence the heat shield, help dissipate the heat. And again, this is all open in the bottom, so a lot of times you're going to use there are radiators, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to have to. American made cars with engines in the front, you're pushing through the air, so the air is being circulated through. Whereas here, you certainly have a radiator, drawing the air from below and then from the sides. This is all open when the trunk slash hood slash bumper is closed. but which is a good thing. A lot of airflow, and airflow in these little engines is not a bad thing. So 28 years, and these things, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I had 7, and here are the ones that came off. Now this one came off relatively easy. Let's see, what are some of the things that I used? I used liquid wrench. I used PB Blaster, which did an excellent job, probably better than the liquid wrench. I did not use WD-40, UB40, that's a band. WD-40 is the lubricant. I did not use that. Somebody suggested it, and then someone posted right behind them in the forum, don't use that. So again, it's the internet, so take it all at face value. The good thing about most of these, they were, they had a bit of an angle to them. So eventually, after a couple of days of spraying them, the PB Blaster and then the other things I used was able to hopefully get down, between the threads, underneath the flange, and actually into the holes themselves, the threaded holes, and loosen it up. Now, it's like I said, it was a pain in the butt. I was able to use a regular socket to get a couple of them off. I had to go to my ratchet drive and do put some ratchet drives on there. My Ryobi cordless impact hammer, impact wrench, whatever the heck it's called. I told you I wasn't a car guy. Picked these up at Home Depot for about 12 bucks. I think this is Milwaukee. So everything you'd want. And then I actually had to get a bolt or nut extracting set. And again, watched a few videos on YouTube, and these are just kind of different heads that have a couple different, bite marks on them. So it's going to get in there. You may have to take a hammer to get them in. A lot of times what you're going to see is as you're going to strip the threads on a lot of these bolts, and they're going to become smaller. Now they are 11 mil, and I don't know what a standard would be, but 11 mil. A little bit of play, but not too bad. But in trying to get these off, that little bit of play really proved to be a bad thing, because that little play allowed the impact wrench to go ahead and strip a lot of these. I used regular sockets with a long handle to try to get some leverage, able to get a few of those off. All said and done, I was able to get all but one off. The one I could not get off was basically this one that points straight down. Was not able to get any of the PB Blaster or liquid wrench onto the threads itself, because the threads are up in here. Now when I got these off, I pried it off a little bit and put a bunch of PB Blaster down these holes, hoping that it would come down and maybe do a little bit here. When it was said and done, I stripped that thing down to almost nothing. So I went ahead and removed the others, pried it away from the actual manifold itself. Then I went ahead and pulled off the heat shield. Now, the actual bolt itself was still there. I did everything I could, and I was not able, it wouldn't budge. I tried to tighten it, loosen it back and forth. I stripped out several of my old ratchets or sockets, so they're in the trash. I took a chisel and was banging up against it, trying to get it, just anything. So a buddy of mine suggested this, and it made sense, because I saw a video to take an angle grinder and go ahead and grind a notch into the bolt itself, and then take a large handled screwdriver, and from here try to get some sort of leverage. And I took a pair of vice grips onto the handle of the screwdriver, and tried to move it. Well, I broke one plastic handled screwdriver. It snapped right off. This thing did not want to budge. And then I took a chisel. I'm like, all right, let me grab one of my old chisels. Again, made the notch a little bit bigger, and the chisel slid in there perfect. I had, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch to work with. So I'm thinking this is going to work. All right. Well, this is what happened to my chisel. I put the chisel up into the little slot, and I got a pair of vice grips, down here. And again, I'm like, all right, I've got this. I've got plenty of leverage, and I'm slowly turning, and the vice grips, they were on tight, and I hear a crack, 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 snap, and then ping. I got shards of this metal chisel going everywhere. So one chisel gone and several sockets gone. Well, I grabbed the new heat shield, which I got from the young man at OK Garage, and I realized I have 1, 2, 3, 4, only 5 bolts, and these are the new bolts. And I was like, wait a second, here's a new bolt, here's an old bolt, and I'm like, great. Did I strip the remainder of the threads from the old bolt into the manifold? So I'm like, great. Am I going to put this bolt in and it's only going to go halfway through or halfway in? But it actually went all the way in. So I went ahead and took the angle grinder and I sanded. I ground that one bolt here that I could not get off. I just ground it down, right to where it meets the manifold itself. And I'm like, I'm just going to have to call it good at this point. So you can go ahead. I went ahead and put it on. Everything fits fine. One thing I am going to do that I decided to go ahead and purchase is some anti-seize lubricant. I'm not sure if this has the copper. I read the ones that contain copper tend to do a little bit better. Well, that looks like a bunch of gunk. Anyway, so this is some anti-seize paste. It is specifically designed for high temperature environments. Around engines, lawn mowers, tractors, that sort of thing. So talk about high temperature environment. This is exactly where this thing is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and put this thing on, and I'll come back in the video in a minute. I'm not going to bore you with me finagling this heat shield and putting an 11 mil socket to it. I did have a question for some folks on a forum about a torque wrench. Should I torque this down? Now, this is not. It's certainly a very nice item to have to dissipate the heat, but this is not something in a very sensitive part of the engine that requires a torque wrench. But I asked a few people, and someone said, just grab your socket and tighten it down and you're good to go, which makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of pieces and parts that will require a torque, one being the spark plugs. And I'm going to order a tune-up kit again from Mr. OK at OK Garage, and fantastic shipping. Went ahead and got it taken care of, and he dropped it in the mail that day. Priority mail gave me the tracking number that day, so I can certainly recommend him as far as sourcing parts. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I did get the spark plugs ahead of time, so I'm going to get the wires, rotor cap, and all that stuff from him, and get that taken care of probably later this week. The title should show up tomorrow. It should have showed up yesterday, but the efficiency of the U.S. Postal Service again struck again, and it's somewhere. My tracking now says, oh hey Mr. Rogers, my tracking now says on the way, or on its way to its final destination, as opposed to picked up by this person, picked up by this post office, en route to Greensboro, North Carolina. So it gives times and everywhere this thing is going. So now it's just your item will be delayed, and basically you'll get it when you get it. But there's at least a tracking number. And hey everybody, this is Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was a feral cat about 4 years ago, and he is now a non-feral cat. And for the most part, if I am here working in the garage or out in the yard, he was right there with me. Mr. Rogers, say hi to everybody on YouTube. All right, and he has a blanket in one of the back seats, so this is where he sleeps. And here he comes. Okay, all right, folks, give me a minute. I'm going to put the heat shield on and get everything tightened down. And Mr. Rogers and I will be back in just a few. Thanks. All right, we're back. Well, I got the heat shield on. Had an interesting issue with one of these bolts, so I pretty liberal use of the anti-seize on these, and one, I'll call it number 1, number 2, number 3. And number 4 is the one that was ground down, so we don't have to worry about placing anything there. And then let's just call this number 5. It was weird. I had it going, and I had it it felt like maybe about 3/4 of the way in, and I felt it getting tight, but then it would pop out. Made sure it was lined up, make sure I wasn't cross-threading anything, and I did it several times. I'm like, what in the world is going on with this thing? So I pulled a couple bolts out, just making sure that all the bolts were the same, and I've got the parts, the part number and stuff like that, if you can read that with all the anti-seize on it. So I checked all the part numbers, and they're all the same bolts. One bolt isn't longer than the other, a different diameter, but it just would not seat, so I could tighten it down. So I pulled it out and put a little less anti-seize on the next bolt, which is the one technically extra because I ground this one off, and it went in just fine. So weird. Not sure what the deal on that was. I was initially thought that when I was taking off the old rusted bolt that I destroyed some of the first few threads and it wasn't going to seat, but we're good to go. So this thing is on nice and solid. It's not going anywhere. I wish I hadn't screwed that one up and able to get it taken care of and get it on there, but it is what it is. And so I realized why the bolts are longer with this heat shield. So we have some sort of gasket. It's not rubber or ceramic. Who knows? I don't know what it is. It's a gasket that goes on top, and then underneath, between the gasket and the heat shield, I don't know, it looks like some sort of mesh or something. And again, I assume that the purpose of that is to help dissipate the heat, so we're not having direct contact with the heat coming off of the bolt right onto the flange. So it gives us a little bit of room, maybe, I don't know, for whatever this little meshy stuff does for ventilation, I guess it's better than nothing. So we don't have, a bolt head and flange directly to the heat shield, which is tied directly to the manifold. And of course, metal conducts heat. So you basically got, as hot as your manifold is, that's going to be as hot as your heat shield is. But hopefully that'll help a little bit. I did tighten these down. I'm not going to go super duper tight on them because I do want them to come off at one point, because I will be replacing parts. I'm just going to kind of piecemeal it. Whatever this guy is called, that is the next thing I need to replace next. And this one's in pretty good shape. This little guy up here looks like it's just a big old piece of something. I have no idea what's behind here. This may be the muffler, because we have a tailpipe over here. So this may be the muffler something or other. Yeah, you can go online and put in the make, model, and ask the website, what is this, what is that? It gives you the part number. And the cool thing about a lot of these companies where you source these parts from, many of them will have a little box saying, hey, if you have any questions before you order a part that may not be the right one, may not be compatible for what you're driving, go ahead and give us the year, make, model, as well as the VIN. So the VIN over there, it's like a 5 or 6 digit VIN. This is a KV4. I believe the 4 is 4-wheel drive, the K car, maybe the V means supercharged. I don't know. I haven't got that far into it, but yeah, I'm going to kind of just, piece at a time. The valve cover, or the rocker cover, whatever you call it, they have a really nice one. It's red. It's a really bright red, and you can get all whatever sort of colored spark plug cables you want. But I think like maybe a red against a blue, or red against black, I think would look kind of cool. The guy in OK Garage, on a couple of his vehicles, he's actually taken the bumper off, and he's running a large muffler. He's got a funky doodle, more of all the twists and turns that comes out, this big old monster thing. I haven't heard it yet, so I don't know if it sounds like one of those little zippy cars or pop 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 pop, whatever. But it looks kind of cool. But I'm going to leave this on here in Central Virginia. A lot of rain, a lot of exposure to the weather, so I don't necessarily want to remove the bumper and have this entire part of the engine exposed. One thing about, last thing I'll talk about is when you get an import like this, and again, I purchased mine from Mayberry Mini Trucks, and they perform the routine maintenance. They look over everything, make sure there's anything crazy happening with it. And again, the people you purchase from here in the United States, they have folks over in Japan that they work with. I guess that may be a wholesaler or a broker. So it's in their best interest for the person in Japan to get something that is in good shape, replace what they can, and to be honest with the person that's purchasing these in the United States, because you don't want to say, oh man, Jimmy, this van is absolutely perfect, and it gets here and there's major work, and you have to spend the money, running your business here to repair it, fix it, whatever, and then go ahead and sell it. So one thing about these, you want to make sure that everything is in good shape. So Mayberry Mini Trucks, they went ahead and they will replace the oil filter, the air filter, and they put in full synthetic. So as far as that, they top off the fluids. Here's the radiator overflow that you can't quite see, and I'll show you those later on. But what I'm going to do is, 25,000 miles. Should it need a tune-up? Probably not. But I'm going to go ahead and pull the plugs once the tune-up kit gets here. I do have a torque wrench for those, and go ahead and do that. Fuel filter. I'm probably going to go ahead and do the fuel filter here in the next couple months. Okay, Garage has them as well as the other folks online. So we'll do a fuel filter. We have the air filter. I'll do the tune-up, pull the air box to make sure everything's okay in there. Take a look at the belts, the pulleys, fluid leaks. I went ahead and not Tractor Supply, Harbor Freight had a really good deal on some vehicle ramps. They were like $60, and it gets the vehicle up another 6 inches. These things set low to the ground naturally. So you get your mechanic's creeper, but unless you're a tiny, tiny person, you're not gonna be able to get underneath there. So, you know, if you're gonna use a jack, make sure you use jack stands. Make sure that your vehicle is secure, that in the event the jack does fail, you have the jack stands to catch it so you can get the hell out of Dodge before you get smushed. I have wheel chocks on the front, so the van is up at an angle. Got the wheel chocks in front. I got these up here on these ramps, so it's doing its job. But yeah, that's basically it, folks. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them into the comments for me. I appreciate you guys coming around and listening to me. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do on the next video. I'm going to try to get to DMV early this week as soon as the title gets here. I've got some other vehicles I need to title, and I'm going to get them out on the road. Oh, last thing before I forget. With Tony from Mayberry Mini Trucks, when he dropped this off, I asked him, I said, what kind of fuel, what octane, 87, 89, what does this thing use? And he had just found out recently from his contact in Japan, he asked about the octane of the fuel. In Japan, the vehicles either run, I believe he said 93 or 98 octane. I believe that 98's for your super fast, you know, zippy cars, race cars. 93 is what everybody else runs. It's also ethanol-free gasoline. You know, ethanol isn't exactly a friend to most internal combustion engines. And I actually found, if you live in a rural area out in farm country, you'll be able to get ethanol-free gasoline all day long. A Wawa about 15-20 minutes away is the closest place I can go to get 93 octane ethanol-free. No idea how much it is, but I am definitely going to take Tony's advice, taking the advice of his guy over in Japan, and definitely going to run 93 octane, no ethanol, as much as possible. So 10 gallon fuel tank. So we'll see what kind of mileage we get on this thing as soon as we get on the road. Okay, folks. Again, now that is the last thing I want to talk about. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll talk to everybody later on. Thanks again.